go. Looks like that's happening. That's good. Mark is online. Mark, you can hear me, right? Give me a thumbs up, please. And we'll start at the end with Alexis.
This is a niche question, but does anyone know when Infinity Castle's coming out on Crunchyroll? It's an anime movie. Infinity Castle. Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. I've been wanting to see that movie for the longest time, but I couldn't catch it in the cinema because school schedule and all. And then we went to watch something else, so I couldn't watch that. And then I missed it. Oh, so it's almost okay. Last time I googled it, there was no announcement date.
Anime isn't really my forte, to be honest.
Sorry?
Isn't really my forte.
Oh, you don't like anime?
I do, but I don't watch it that much.
Demon Slayer is really good though. It's one of the best that I've seen.
Okay, here we go. Let me just make sure. Yeah, you guys online are hearing me, right? Crimson, Diana, Mark, Amy. Oh, Cookie Hunter is Amy. Okay, good. And here's our Linka. What movie did Demon
Slayer Infinity Castle.
Infinity? That's the whole title?
The show's name is Demon Slayer, but the movie's name is Infinity Castle because it's like the final battle with the big bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And here we go.
Hello, here's my project for the week. Or projects, I should say. I'm gonna start with the easing. So this is my ease in and out. The extreme ease hammer, the light hammer, heavy hammer. And that's my
The
light
unintentional edit
ball,
there.
and the heavy ball, and that's my phone. Just give me a second. Yeah, I like the squishiness.
Do you have two timelines
was
open
hitting.
usually like that?
Oh, it's the one is the timeline, the other one is the graph editor.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because for some reason the graph editor doesn't have like the controls
Oh,
at the top.
there's an add-on for that. The add-on is hard to remember the name. Is it key or button? Timeline buttons. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. I meant to mention this before this. So yeah, add-ons, timeline buttons puts that's why it's here twice on mine. Yeah. So like I said, the I think I forget which way it is. I think the timeline is going away, so that it's just dope sheet graph editor because there's like so much overlap between timeline and dope sheet, and so but they're in transition right now. So anyways, this puts the buttons on all of them now, and so yeah, you'll see that when I go to the graph editor, I believe, yeah, I still have the buttons there. So yeah, that's a huge quality of life add-on there, and I think hopefully soon in Blender that'll just be fixed. But yeah, everyone should definitely turn that on. That's under add-ons.
I just personally like having the extra window because if I wanted to like jump, for example, to the shader editor real quick without going to a whole new screen, then I can quickly do that.
Yeah, yeah. And so just as another I mean, I think I've done this in class at some point, but if you go to the upper corner, is it both corners? Yeah, like any of the corners, any corner or just the upper corner? Any corner. In any of the panels, when you get the crosshair, can I zoom in on that? I can't zoom in on that. When you get the crosshair, if you click and drag, it'll give you another panel there, which you then can turn into anything that you would want, right? So you could turn this into, another outliner or anything you would want to customize your interface there. And then, if you want to get back to just whatever the usual was, you can just go back and add layout again, and then you're just back to usual there. So those two things are important.
Yes. So this is a hammer hitting a light ball, and this one is hitting a heavy ball.
A large chunk of my recording is missing. I don't know what happened.
And then this one. Yeah. So these are my hand-drawn frames. Alright.
Cool, great.
I did I also rendered out the frame rates normally, so a little chunk of my video is missing. I don't know what happened.
I mean, do you usually edit them?
No, I just synced the raw file.
Oh, you just sent the wrong
Then
file.
I know
Okay.
that there isn't anything missing, so
Yeah, I'm not sure. That looks good. Yeah, I saw the hammers come by on Discord, I think. And yeah, yours, I mean, yeah, this one definitely looks heavier than the other one, so that's good. This to me, it kind of looked like it was like on a spring, when it hit it, like the back and forth there.
it was kind of more like a stylistic impact, so it's like it hits the ball and then it bounces back.
Okay.
So it's in between heavy and light, not completely light, not completely heavy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, the main things I wanted to see was like obviously the heavy ball moves less distance, right? And the hammer has more of a reaction. And then some of you did the thing where the hammer swings through the light ball. I think that's really a key thing, a key moment of communicating that the light ball is light. And then nice work here. Being a little bit ahead and having some smearing in and stretching in the hand-drawn one. So well done, very nice. And let's see. Alexis is here very short. Maybe she's uploading the next thing. Let me see. I'll grab her hammers. And then, let me just say this to everybody. I think I tried to take it out of all of my class content. Please do not zip. Because I used to tell people, please zip. Now I'm saying, please do not zip. Just if you upload, you can upload multiple files to Canvas at the same time, right? You can just say this one and this one and this one and this one, and then say upload all those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to upload them individually.
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean like that? No, I think you have to upload them individually.
You can't just select multiple ones in the same.
No. At least I tried and it didn't want me to.
It didn't do that. So everybody else, when you're uploading multiple files, you say upload this one, and then upload this one. Like you have a separate dialog box. You can't select multiple.
I don't know if there's like a button that allows you to select multiple at the same time, but
I think you can if you uploaded to Canvas previously and then just tell it to use those files. But I
Right.
haven't used that method, so I don't know.
it's not like After Effects where you can just
Say all these things. Yeah.
Because what it needs to,
multiple files.
yeah, it needs to check if the file is supported. So I think that's why.
Oh. Wonder if I uncheck that box on the other. Okay. Anyways, regardless, don't. I mean, that's more of a hassle than I would like. I'll see if there's any way around that. But don't zip, because yeah, especially in instances like this, which is pretty much every week where I have you upload more than one thing. When I go to grab the videos, it makes it easier for me to be able to just grab the video and not have to download all of this stuff. So there's that. So a couple of you zipped, and we'll make it work this week. Okay, so here's Alexis's. That's nice. Oh, Creative Hammers. This is the one. Yes, Creative Hammer. There we go. Okay, so let me just see if we can just do Creative Hammer, please. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good, but the main things here, yeah, swinging through the light ball here would communicate this, like, especially because it maybe for the first one you could make it work if it rebounded, but here after that you still have it rebounding off the invisible wall, which doesn't make a lot of visual sense after you've hit the ball. Over here, yeah, this ball moves less, so that communicates it's heavier. But then, yeah, the rebounds over here, Alexis, you weren't the only one to do this, seem way too quick there. Watching what I'm doing and creating a similar graph is part of the process, but then figuring out how, because I'm always zooming in and zooming out on the graph editor. And so the amount of time I'm looking at is almost certainly different than the amount of time you're looking at. And so playing it back and knowing whether it's too fast or too slow, and if it's too fast, you have some sort of wave you thought looked good, but it's too fast, that means you need to grab these and spread them out to slow down the motion. If you have some sort of wave and it's too slow, you need to grab these and squeeze them smaller so it speeds up the motion, because this is definitely too fast there. Right, it stops because your acceleration down on the original swing, that looks good. It looks like gravity is accelerating the hammer, but then it looks like some other force is smacking it against the ball very, very quickly after that. Good start, though. Good start. Okay, that was Alexis. We did Arlenka's. Here is Thomas. Thomas has his name in the OBS token, which is wonderful.
Hey, Casey. So first, you're talking about my Lego stuff, so that's actually my full Lego.
Whoa, it's a lot of Lego. Is that this one over here?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't remember.
Ghostbusters.
Oh, they've got the Ghostmobile from Ghostbusters.
Yeah, yeah, up here.
Oh, I see the Disney 100 animation Lego set right there in the middle.
This one here? Yeah, there's Mickey Mouse.
I always love the R2D2.
Yeah, that's big. I don't think I've seen that one before.
And I think that's the house right there. I can't tell.
Yeah, impressive, most impressive.
Yeah, Lego nerds.
Right. Empire Strikes Back at the end.
I really love the Ghostmobile though. That's
Yeah.
cool.
No, we watched the one of the new ones over the weekend. The Afterlife. That was good. I really enjoyed it. No, the one before that. We haven't watched that one yet. It was really good. Everybody really enjoyed it. I thought it was solid. It felt like Ghostbusters for sure.
Yeah, better than the reboot.
What's that?
Better than that reboot that came in 2016.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Collection. And I still got one in the closet. I'm building. The Millennium Falcon is actually one of them. So this is my video of the heavy and light hammer hitting the balls. And then this.
Okay, so that's, yeah. Again, this one, think about having it swing through. And then yeah, like your bounces, your reaction bounces are very, very, very fast, too fast.
So this is my video of the heavy and light hammer hitting the balls. And then this is uh, my graph editor for both of them. So both of them are coming down and then hitting. The heavier one is this one right here. So it hits, but then the bounces are less. This is the light ones. And then both the heavy and light ball. So the light one, I did a gradual curve going up. That's kind of like the ball's actually rolling. And then same thing with the heavy one.
Okay, so yeah, a couple points here. You have normalize on, so that's stretching everything vertically. That may make it tough. So, or no, you have it off. Maybe you had it on and then unclicked it. Anyways, because this is stretched a lot vertically, for me, that seems visually tough to process. So something like this, you're getting the job done, but this is not maybe the most best practice, right? If you can draw a smooth line here, then it's probably better to have 2 points, a point there and a point at the end, and then you're handling the Bezier handles. Having all of these points along the way just makes it very difficult to make easy, smooth changes. Maybe here, here, and here would be okay, but you've got a lot of other keyframes along the end there, and so that is not the best practice. And then your light hammer reactions, whichever ones those are, it seems like you're trying to fit them into this amount of time, and maybe you just need more time. Okay, so I mean, like, I do it however I'm doing it, but if ultimately you have to look at the image and the animation that you're creating. Do you need more frames to make it work?
But of course, this one's smaller because of the weight of the ball. And then here's my dope sheet for both of them. So the light one is spread out more, showing the bounces after hitting the ball. Same with the light sphere. And then the heavier ones are more on this side because of the less bounce with those. And then here is my videos, the other ones. So it's the FPS videos, ease in, ease out, the hand-drawn ones, then the hammer ones, and then Bezier, linear, and constant. For me, I have no questions. Pretty fun assignment. And then especially doing the hammer, heavy hammer and light hammer with hitting the light ball and heavy ball was fun. Trying to get it all to come together and get the right amount of. Just sometimes it looked like the ball jerked too much. So
yeah, so some changes there, just simplifying your graph editor for sure, and then also, think about it swinging through the ball with the heavy ball. If it does bounce with the heavy hammer, with the heavy ball, if the hammer does bounce off, think about the speed at which it's doing that, because that was really, really, really quick there. I think I'll probably have everybody do, revisions on this scene as part of this next week's tranche of scenes. Here's Shyla's. Shyla got done early. I think she posted hers like on Wednesday or Thursday. Here's there. And then Mark was in a zip. Here's Mark.
Hello, this is Mark Wise, and I'm here to show off my scene here. So this is the unique scene I created with the hammer hitting the ball here. And as you can see, I've done it. So I'm just going to play the animation real quickly, and we'll just see. Boom, like that. Wasn't
Okay,
hard.
and something else important here. It's one thing for your computer to run Blender. It's another thing for your computer to run Blender and record on OBS, right? OBS is, like, in my experience, the lightest, meaning easiest to use screen recording software, but it's still not nothing, right? It's more work for the computer to do both than just to do one at the same time. So when you're doing your presentation videos, if you have to be in Blender showing me stuff and Blender seems to be running slowly, don't be in render view. Solid would be solid, or if things are really squirrely, dropping down to wireframe, that would also would be faster. So Mark is in solid view and it's running just fine.
So, how does this work, and how do they do everything? So, first of all, the biggest thing really is just the hammer and how it interacts with the ball. So, the light ball at the top there, the hammer passes forward and swings through, and then goes back and then stabilizes. With the heavy ball, the hammer hits the heavy ball and it bounces back because of the mass of the ball, and it swings back and then it goes to neutral. Also, the balls, the heavier ball is slower while the lighter one is obviously faster. I'm not sure if that's exactly physics accurate, probably, but it's it's good for the animation. It makes it very clear that the ball on the bottom is a
just to be clear, we're not physicists, we're informed by physics, right? We want to know enough to at least understand the general principles of how things work here, right? Because as we discussed on Monday at length, we're sort of exploring a continuum of like real world physics to exaggerated physics. So ultimately we're artists who need to make images that work, and so this looks good.
lot more slower.
Right, the main things here, the light one here swinging through, right? So what do we want to avoid? We want to avoid it looking like it's hitting invisible stuff. That's one thing. And then two, I wanted to see the light ball go further than the heavy ball. That's sort of clear and physics accurate there. I wanted to see the balls decelerate, right? That was another major thing to make happen, right? When the moment it hits the hammer hits it, it goes faster, and then it slows down over time. And then the hammer itself, what happens after the swinging? Are you able to tune the keyframes to get what looks like physics accurate free swinging back and forth?
I mean, a lot more heavier. All right, and then our next animation is, I have to show off, let me see, to show off the fundamentals. So we have, let's open this. So this is the extreme ease in and ease out here. Boom. Very simple. Next one, we have the frame rate. Sorry. And here, I didn't really change the letters. My bad. My bad, guys. But it is indeed a different frame rate. I know. I'm so lazy. My bad, guys. But the work is there. I know how to use it.
Good.
And then we have the
How the Suzanne, yeah.
grease pencil here. Very simple. I have it so there are more frames near the end, more frames here. This is constant. That works. Then I have the basic weight one right here, which is this. And then finally, if I can find it. I'm not sure if I have that basic one. I have, actually, yeah.
Okay, looks good, Mark. Just yeah, well done on the light and heavy there. Things, the timing feels good on what you have there. Here is Shyla's.
Hello, my name is Shyla, and here is my hammer striking a ball scene. One is light, one is heavy. When I made this, I just took the hammer from the other hammer animation that we did with the light and heavy hammer, and I used like the same model and stuff, and then I keyframed it so it would hit a certain point to like match where these balls are, and then I also keyframed those balls to be at this position at this point so they would make contact. And then as you can see, when I go to this keyframe, I think it's this one, yeah, this one's the heavier one. It doesn't make as much distance, and I made it so that it stopped sooner because it's supposed to be heavier. And then the light one goes a little bit more, like longer in time, and also it makes a lot more distance. So here is my graph editor for that.
Okay, the balls and the initial swing both look good, but now, besides changing how the balls move, how can you animate the hammer reaction to that to complement the perceived weight of each sphere? That would be the next step for you.
Hold on. To really zoom out. There you go. Okay, and then I took the same approach like with the bouncing one. So like when it's hit, I imagine that it goes really fast at first and then loses speed. So I basically shot this straight up, and then when it slows down, it's very slow. That one's the heavy one. The light one is a lot more obvious. Let me see. Yeah, so this one goes straight up, which is just this way. It's not actually up, it's on the x-axis. And then this one slows down, and I'll play it again. Okay, and for the next scenes, I'm putting it off to the side here so that my webcam doesn't block it, but I put it all into a single video, so it'll show the hammer one first. And then it'll just go through all the other ones. This one's the first one, where we explore the different interpolations. This one's the different easing types. And this one's, yeah, FPS. And then the 2D one, and then the last one is going to be the bouncing and the light and heavy hammers. Thank you.
Cool, great. So yeah, working on the hammer animation on this scene, right? How do these react to this, right? That's your next step there. But well done, and you're way ahead of the curve time-wise, which is great, right? Working on things earlier, if you run into problems, it's much more likely it's going to be very easy to get help before that. 7 o'clock on Tuesday is not a great time to seek help, right? Just telling everyone what you already know, right? Amy, or actually, sorry, Crimson is next. Here's Crimson's.
Oh my gosh, my camera is so blurry. I think it's just 'cause it's dark. But anyway, so first we have my heavy hammer and my light one. So first we have my heavy hammer and my light one. And then
Okay, let me see that one more time. It looks like you've got some reaction from the hammers in there.
my heavy hammer and my light one.
Yeah, I think you got them. I couldn't quite tell which one you're pointing at. So that's the light one. That's the heavy one there. That's pretty good. The initial movement of the spheres, I would say, is pretty good. But then yeah, after the initial downswing, some of the back and forth seemed rush. That's, as we're watching them, that's been our tendency, right? Whether that's, it's hard to say exactly what that is, but partially because we're dealing with these shorter compositions, and then I think people have a good idea of what the amount of motion they need to have in the animation is, meaning like it needs to go here, it needs to go here, it needs to go here, and then it needs to go here. But the place where we're falling short often is that we're smushing these positions. They need to be expanded out to give them more of a natural weight, to make it seem, to avoid it seeming like something is exerting a force beyond gravity there.
And then get into the weighted ones in general. So we got those.
Those, but both of the spheres falling felt pretty good.
We have the FPS ones. We have the 2D ones.
So here, I mean, you guys are clearing you're doing the task here, right? You're grouping the ease in at the beginning, you're grouping the ease out at the end in terms of them moving along. And then people are equally spacing the linear one, right? But the other thing to take into account here, right? Would you say that most of these were really fast or really slow? Really fast, right? Because again, this is sort of, there's a meta message here about hand-drawn animation. So far, no one has done the thing where they draw more frames in order to make it a longer, smoother animation, right? So keeping that in mind, but then also, yeah, trying to think about how the shape of it and redrawing the shape each time so it's a little bit different affects the style and character of it.
We have the easing. And then we have the original ones from last week.
Yeah, that's good. It's better to have them hit their point, you know, before the end so that it looks like the constant one does something there.
Now, I would have them recorded, but I'm having a problem with my files, and I need to delete a whole bunch of videos, but I just wanted to get this turned in before, because I just got off of work, and it's late, so I'll fix my file thing so I can get the videos made to make it easier to take care of. But yeah, those are my videos.
Okay, and then in general, do not work with a full hard drive, right? You know, once your hard drive gets to about, you know, 3/4 full, you should be moving files off of it in some way. You can, one of the quick ways to tell here is to go to my computer or this PC, right? And so, yeah, my H drive here is in violation of this rule I just said. This is actually not a drive, it's just the network space that we have here. Yeah, like once it starts to get beyond this, if you only have one drive in your computer, then you're going to start to experience some possible issues, because the computer does, there's the RAM, which is the short-term memory, but then it does also write more stuff to that extra space. And if there's no extra space, then you'll start to see some problems arise there, for sure.
You can also partition your drive, which is what I did.
You could do that, but don't, you know, like, unless you know exactly what you're doing, don't start to experiment with that at this point.
I do have an idea. I want to get like a USB and put most of my Blender files in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. You got to make sure you're connecting it to the computer with your USB 3.0 to make sure it's quick enough so that you're working off of there and it's fast. A lot of students get the right drive, but then they use like a really crappy USB adapter or a different cable. And just not all USB cables are the same. I'll just say that for now. There's a bunch more to say about it, but
It also helped that the Windows isn't like what 100 gigs at the moment.
It's-
Taking up 100 gigs.
oh yeah, Windows takes up a ton of space.
So this is going to be a shorter video than what was required. I was a bit behind with some other assignments, so I barely had time to work on this, but I thought it was better to turn in what I had now.
Good. So I told everybody last week, right? Right. Stay with the class and show me.
For right now, I only have the first
I did tell everybody that last week. Yes.
3 animations. For the first one, I have the fundamental tweening video. The second one is the tweening curves. And finally, the FPS examples. So that's all I had for now, but I'll probably get the rest.
Okay, good. I mean, get to the hammer stuff because that's where the big, the meat of the assignment is. But you're making some progress, and you did exactly what I asked. Like, okay, I'm getting this done. I'm trying to work and get caught up. The people who do that throughout the past have caught up and worked well. So please do that. Here is Diana and Edward and Trenton.
Hi, my name is Diana, and this is the hammer and ball animation. And this is the... My name is Diana, and this is the hammer and ball animation.
Okay. You are getting reaction from the hammer, right? In that, it does move after the impact. So good. But I would say looking at that could be improved. Here, the light one bounces back a lot, whereas again, swinging through is probably going to communicate that a little bit better. The heavy one here, let's see if we can watch that one more time.
Animation.
Yeah. Okay, so that looks like the general blocking out of what you have for the hammer is good, but it's very fast. It feels like gravity and time is sped up for this. The ball animation, you seem to be achieving what we want, faster at the beginning, slowing down, the light one moves faster. So these need some work in terms of timing there.
And this is the graph for the light ball. And then for the heavy ball. This is the 2D animation.
Yeah, that's close. I mean, we have very few frames here, so it's tough to communicate the ease when there's just a handful of frames.
This is the easing and ease out.
Yep.
This is the light and heavy ball and heavy hammer.
Good. Let's see the heavy ball again. Yeah, heavy ball, we have a little bit of that skip bounce there
This
at the
is
very
the
end.
frame rate information.
Okay, good. Do you have a question here at the end?
And
Let's
this is the busy, linear, and constant.
see. Okay, good. Very. Some things to look at there, timing-wise, on the one you did on your own. Right, so this, again, encouraging you not to do it Tuesday evenings, especially as we go on, and this type of work, in order to block out the keyframes, do all the detail work, you have to look at it many, many, many times. And your ability, even when you're good, to assess what it is that you've done decreases over time as you're working on it, right? You see it this close. It's part of doing this kind of work. When you look at it this close, you're using a different part of your brain. You kind of lose your ability to step back and look at the thing holistically, and that's really important in terms of understanding the timing and the feel of it, and being able to do a bunch of this work, have the time to step away, have a coffee, eat lunch, then come back and look at what you did and be like, oh, that's clearly too fast, it's clearly too slow, and it'll be obvious, right? If you can give your mind and your perceptual apparatus the opportunity to rest in between those things. But you've got to time manage to the point where you can create the space to have those perceptual breaks in the process. So keep that in mind. So yeah, going back and looking at the timing of your hammers there is the main thing I would encourage you to look at there, Deanna. And Edwards is here. There we go.
This is what I did for the ball weight assignment. I wanted to represent the two different the two different weights mainly through the hammers. So each ball moves pretty differently. The heavy ball only has a couple of ones for when it gets impacted, and then the light ball only moves after being impacted and then keeps going for a little bit. The heavy hammer also has quite a few, mostly just for the swinging. The light hammer also has quite a few because it made contact with the small ball a couple of times.
Okay, interesting. Your light hammer, the way it swings through and back and forth, I would say great. That looked I felt that it was just under the influence of gravity the entire time. The ball itself,
the two different weights.
Yeah, the ball animation needs some work. It feels like the ball, it felt linear to me. Yeah, I didn't feel it just went fast and then stopped. So with that in mind, perhaps it hit it so hard that it just took off, in which case you might be able to make this work if it moved off the screen, where you're just like, oh, well, then presumably it stopped somewhere else when it was out of frame. But right now it just seems like it zoom and stops, and so that doesn't feel very good. Over here, I mean, it looked like you kind of did a thing where it hit the heavy and then moved it only a tiny bit and then kind of hit it again on the second thing. That's kind of interesting. I don't think I saw anyone else do that. But then the degree to which the heavy hammer swings back and the speed of the reactions, right? Again, you blocked out reactions on the heavy hammer. That's good, but the timing on them is bad. It's way too quick. It feels like someone is flipping it back and forth like this, not as if it's having a natural physics-based reaction to the heavy ball.
Also just for the swinging. The light hammer also has quite a few because it made contact with the small ball a couple of times. It's the hammer on the heavy ball isn't perfect, but it was the best that I could do with.
Yeah, it's not perfect. These are way too fast, right? So selecting those, putting the keyframe here, and scaling them so that they scale in this direction is going to spread these out over more time, which is some variation of that needs to happen here in order to make this feel better.
At least I think it is for now. This is what it looks like since it just moves whenever it's being interacted with. The heavy ball is mostly just a bunch of hills, and the light ball, it just gets struck one time and then goes flying, so it's just a very steep incline.
Yeah. So, here the heavy hammer bounces less, like this big initial thing and then a couple just tiny skip steps there, both for this and that, right? Here in position, there in rotation. Using that as sort of your basis of the heavy to get started, right? Your heavy, the reaction is coming way up here, and a heavy thing, unless it's propelled at great velocity, is not going to do that. Okay, good start. Some additional tuning needs to happen there. Let me see. We got Trenton's too. Here's Trenton.
Hello, my name is Trenton Heller, and this is my hammer ball scene. This is my hammer ball scene. Trenton Heller, and this is my hammer ball scene. This is the graph editor with all my changes and smoothing, as well as my dope sheet where I put the animations.
Okay, I felt like the light one was pretty good. Let's watch one more time.
This is my hammer ball scene.
Close. Yeah, I mean, this I would say 60% of the way there, in that we have the easing going back and forth, but the rate and pace of that easing felt rushed at different points. Here, yeah, the initial reaction of this being propelled backwards I thought was good, but then it seemed, what's that? Yeah. Then it smacked against nothing, hit an invisible wall after that, right? And so, yeah, when we did the hammers hitting the ground, right, just for compositional sake, we didn't draw the ground there. We could have, but we were clearly hitting the ground. Here we're hitting the ball, and so you can't just copy and paste the same stuff because we're going to hit something the first time, but then not after that.
Wanting to emphasize the weight of the hammers as well as the resistance faced by the balls, which is why the hammers have different swings to them and they stop at different times and the balls go farther. Because I wanted to make sure that that sense of realism was shown and how they would connect and the hammers and the sort of physics would apply to it. And these are my other animations as well. This is my weight or mass. This is my 2D. This is my tweening animation. This is my FPS animation, or at least video. This is my original one showing everything off as the final video, and that is everything.
Okay, some work to do here on the heavy, and then this swinging needs some tuning here as well, right? Yeah, giving yourself the space to work on these. Here's Aaron.
Hey y'all, I have here all 6 of my animated ball scenes, and up first we of course have the applied learning scene with the hammer hitting the ball. So to start this, I first of course made 2 duplicate hammers and balls, and I started with the heavy one. I assumed that, or I thought a bit about the physics here, because it's going to be hitting the same weight of hammer, hitting a heavier ball, it's going to lose more energy on the initial impact. And as you can see, it swings back and forth less. So I started with the hammer in that regard, and then just took the frame where it initially hits the ball, right here, which is where I, of course, started animating the ball. Just moved it a few keyframes forward, and then inferred how many rotations it based on that, and animated that as well. And of course, you can see here in the graph editor. Hopefully it'll look.
Yeah, you were scrubbing the whole time, so it's hard to get a sense of the speed. Let's see, is this scene 6 or scene 1? There we go. Let's see that again.
Ayo.
Yeah, well done. Let's see it again.
Ayo.
Yeah, a lot of energy loss on the heavy one, and yeah, you added the rolling with the textures. That really works, right? Part of the glowy texture thing is like we weren't worrying about that at this point, but yeah, that looks good.
I have here also animated that as well, and of course you can see here in the graph editor. Hopefully it'll load. For the ball, it gets hit. It's very fast at the beginning, and it slows down. And same with the rotation. And of course, for the hammer, you can see it is dropped, eases in, then hits and loses some velocity here, and then bounces a few times.
Yeah, so especially with the zooming in and zooming out on the graph editor, as you know, copying my graph editor as we're working is not a great strategy. What you should be looking at, you know, is the relative magnitude of things, right? This is like, I don't know, 0.1 the height of the starting point, something like this, like 1/10 of this. That is more relevant information than the specific time, because yours are going to start in slightly different positions and everything else. Being able to tune things based on the relative magnitude, right? When we did the light one, it was a bounce, and then the next bounce was like, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the first bounce. That was, you know, when you think about a ping pong ball, it comes up almost as high as the initial drop if you were to drop a ping pong ball, right? And so, you know, it's like 0.9. So well done.
And same process for the light ball, just with much more movement and more bounces, as you can see. For the other scenes, we have...
Okay, and then Aaron, you know, I'm not picking on you, just allows me to bring up a good point here. So if you're working on a laptop, when you're doing this kind of work, plug it in. All laptops are designed to work way better when they are plugged in, right? When you have it not plugged in, unless you went in and did a bunch of power setting stuff, like they're going to try to save power by slowing down the computer, right? Yes.
When I first got this laptop, I was testing things, and I played doing Dark Ages to test my frame rate.
Without your battery, and what did you get to play for? What, 2 minutes?
I got like an average about 75, 80 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
When I plugged my computer in, the fan started tuning, and I got like 140 frame rates per second on average.
Yeah. Like, I mean, Aaron might have been in a situation where he just couldn't plug in the computer. I understand. I'm just making the case. This is important for everybody. Most everybody is working on laptops. Some of you have desktops at home, but you know, this isn't obvious to everybody. The performance is way better when it's plugged in, right? Way better.
The demonstration of weight, where the lighter ball and the lighter hammer bounce more. Simple. The hand-drawn easing, where I made some guides, of course, as was recommended, and animated to those, although I perhaps made the easing out a bit extreme. frame rate.
So good. Aaron, you're doing a great job here. But when you present everything, hit the play button so we can scrub. Once you play it a couple times, then scrubbing is fine. But let's see it play back at the correct rate there, because it's really hard to say anything about the timing.
Again,
when we're
very
scrubbing.
simple to duplicate and have different stepped interpolation values, easing in and out. You can see the easing curves there, very symmetrical.
Okay, great. Well done, Aaron. You've got it. Here's Anthony's. Let me grab his. And Desmond. And Jose. And Lawson's. Lawson's, yours is called demonstration. Is that it? Okay. And Gauge. And Alec. There we go. Anthony. Okay. I understand, but this is more advice for everybody. I give it just to get in the interest of being future professionals. Don't sandbag. What is sandbagging? It's lowering expectations, right? You're preparing for the worst by telling everyone, this is not going to be that great. Have I done things where, I didn't fully realize my creative vision? Yes, right? Did I start my presentation to the client by saying oof, some things really went wrong here? No, I did not, right? Because the client, that's not what the client wants to hear. I am not telling you to lie and misrepresent yourself. I'm just saying, there's been plenty of instances where the thing that bothered me a lot about something, I would show it to somebody else, and they would not even notice whatever it was I'd spent the last 72 hours obsessing over. And is that good or bad? It is what it is. Okay. So just everybody here, I'm sure it's going to be great. All right. Let's see how it goes. Let's see. Let me turn it up over here.
Approach this with by putting the two hammers side by side and do the wool side by side. I know the ones are supposed to go faster and the heavy ones are supposed to go slower and with less distance. Maybe this is not the best way to.
Okay. That's good. I would say you blocked things out correctly. You got the right stuff in the right places. So that's great. Both of the speed of both of the balls was they stopped suddenly, right? And so that tells me that the graph is more of a straight line than it is a curve, right? Since they're being hit by the hammer, they're going to go, in this case, probably something like this. They're going to go faster and then slow down, both of them, right? The amount of distance that the curve goes, that's probably the heavy one and that's the lighter one, right? Because it goes more, covers more distance vertically in the graph. So that's one of the first things I notice here. Here, let's see it one more time. Okay, and then the heavy ball seemed to keep moving for a longer amount of time than I thought felt right. And then the hammer that's hitting the heavy ball, as we talked about, should probably have some kind of reaction in the opposite direction, right? And yours kind of went through and was a bit quick going back and forth there. So those would be the main things I would point out here to start off with. And then again, this is really good example here, Anthony, of yeah, if your Blender playback is just not working while you're using OBS, play back the rendered movie instead of the Blender playback, because that will be much easier for the
frame rate. The hand drawn.
Good. I mean, here, the grouping, yeah, these two look, the top one and the middle one look fairly similar, right? The ease in, these would need to be denser towards the beginning. The ease out looks like you have it a little bit denser here. So not, really only the linear one is going to have a keyframe that's directly in the middle. The other one's probably, you know, it's skewed one way or the other way there. So that would be the thing. And then, yeah, I mean, in general, the guide is not something you would include in the final render, right? So that, you know, it's there for you to, as the animator, to sort of parse things out in time. And I think it's super useful for this kind of hand-drawn situation. But you'd want to uncheck that.
The interpolation. In the other way.
Yeah, the light ones feel very bouncy. Yeah, those feel really good, and the heavy ones felt heavy. So that first scene there, well, I'll have you guys just do changes on that one as part of this week's thing, the very first scene. Because not only is it good to improve it, but, you know, I'll do this to a certain extent throughout the semester. The idea that in the professional world you would turn something in once is a complete pipe dream, right? It's all about getting the initial thing to the client, most of the time the client deciding that, like, oh, what I asked you to do is not at all what I want, and then making changes back and forth with the client is how a lot of creative work goes in many, many, many instances. And so part of what we're going to do here is, you know, also practice that.
Hello, this is Desmond, and this is my week 2 presentation, and yeah, this is the hammer strike, and brain.
Everybody has fun custom mouse icons this semester. Like all the classes, everyone's got fun things as their mouse icon.
I used to do that, and then apparently the place that I did it when I was a kid had viruses, so.
And that the animation.
Yeah, I mean, you've got this giant monitor. Desmond, I'm old. Like, zoom in a little bit on these things. It's like way out there. Let's see it again. That looked pretty good.
Brain.
Not bad. I mean, I would say make the heavier one heavier, because the difference between them here is, you know, not exaggerated. Let's exaggerate it. And so that would be the first thing, because the heavy ball moves, like, is this less distance than this? Yes. I would say bring it down. I mean, your ultra widescreen monitor may be working against you here, right? Maybe make the window a little bit smaller so that you're working with a little bit more constrained space, but that would help a little bit. And then, yeah, you're bouncing off an invisible wall a bunch there at the end, and let's not do that.
And that the animation, from what I read.
Yeah, both the heavy hammer and the light hammer are bouncing off the invisible wall, and we want them to swing after the.
Well, prior to running, I used to mostly run from the light and heavy hammers to do the hammer strike. So so get that ball strike, on in.
Mm-hmm.
So I use a little bit of easy in, and reference to for the ball to get strike. So I can again strike, and then stuff, and then timing and stuff from other investors, from watching the videos and stuff, like different timings, and then
Yeah, it looked like there are some frames here where the hammer goes through the ball as well, so probably avoiding that.
this, and getting sooner and stuff compared to oh,
Let's see that one again.
see, and it's the hammers I made for them. What happened? Okay, that supposed to happen. Okay, reload this.
You just hit the backwards play button. Perhaps if your mouse icon was smaller, it'd be easy to press. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You can make your mouse look away whatever you want. My son has turned his up. He has like a tablet that's like, I don't know, 6 inches. It's very small. And the mouse takes up, I don't know, 20% of the screen. Like, it's gigantic.
Oh, I've seen videos of that.
I don't know why.
And the rating.
Okay, not bad. This one, the easing on the hammer seems to be asymmetrical, meaning that it kind of goes up faster than it goes down. Remember, gravity works equally on the way up and the way down. Okay, good. You're on your way there.
Hello, my name's Jose Cinco, and this is my ball animation. Very short, but how I got it was, I remember doing a similar project to this in a previous class using Cinema 4D. Depending on the speed of hammers like this one, being a lot quicker, which is the heavy hammer, and also making the ball go a lot faster than the light ball right here.
Okay, I feel like the basic blocking is in place here. Just like, yeah, you said yourself you're tired. Like the speed at which the hammers are swinging seems like it's motivated beyond gravity, especially the initial swing here. We don't see it sort of pick up steam. It kind of just continues at the same speed the entire time.
Here in the light hammer. While also including like some little animations to make it look like they're swinging after hitting the ball.
Yeah, you do have, again, the animation is blocked out, but the distance between the keyframes needs to be worked on there, right? I think it needs to be.
Which is something I learned from that previous class as well. That is how I executed it, as you can see here, with the keyframes being much different with each hammer, and the balls as well. Here's the fundamental ones. The pink one's the ease, this one's linear, and this one's constant. It's a fairly short animation, but I think I finally got what I needed to do for this one. Here's the ease in and ease out one. This one I had fun making, especially working with a line graph. And it was fun to actually, mess around with the line graph to see what different speeds they go through. Here's FPSs. This one was kind of confusing to go through at first, but once I finally figured out what I needed to do, I actually managed to get a pretty great animation result from this. Here's weight.
Okay, so this one needs some work. On the rotation ones here, I'm not sure if you show us the graph editor. Your graph editor looks like this, and so it's decelerating before it hits the ground, whereas the rotational transform property on the hammers is going to look something like that, right? So we have this accelerating the whole way until we hit the ground there. And yeah,
She managed to
yeah, not only slow, but then the shape of the curve is not
Here's
quite right.
weight.
Same with the spheres. They're doing this, and they need to be doing this.
Probably could speed out the animations a lot more, especially with the light hammer. Well, kind of did like how it turned out. And 2D.
So yeah, it's not, the biggest problem there is not the speed; it's the shape of the F curve. Okay.
Animation. Yeah, this one was honestly kind of a hard one to do, especially since these.
Okay, so you're missing the point of the guide there, right? With you did the linear guide correct, but then these two guides, you want the same number, whatever you did here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 frames in between the beginning and the end, and we need to group those closer to the end on this one and closer to the beginning. And so you want to actually mark those spots on the thing. Okay, so a little bit of work to do there too. Good. They were flickering? Let me see. Did you do something when you're in graph editor mode? Let's see.
Hello, my name's Jose, especially with the light.
Yeah, there's a lot of keyframes here. So I think the flickering is a result of some of these, right? So when we're working on the 3D spheres, each keyframe is mostly a position, right? But here, each keyframe is a whole drawing, right? That's important to realize here. Once we go into grease pencil mode and we're using it like this, each of these keyframes is a whole frame. It's a whole drawing, right? And I think there's way more diamonds than I see positions up here, which is telling me that perhaps some of these drawings are blank. So that's why the ball is flickering away at some point. And so zooming, your timeline is also really smushed here, right? And so I would zoom in here to be able to look and see which ones are blank and delete the blank ones. That's going to be the first step there. So, yeah, that would be the first thing. Okay, and
for my implementation, one thing I would say is I kind of misunderstood, so I just have it kind of like someone swinging it instead of gravity hitting the ball, but there's both the same force that I did.
okay, all right, let's check it out.
Hi, I'm Ross, and I'm just going to go over how this worked out for me. I just have it back up a little bit and smack the ball, so it's giving it a little bit of anticipation, and then just smacks it through. The ball bounces a little bit, you can see right here, and then it rolls off and it kind of stops. I'm imagining that this is sort of a high friction material, so it stops kind of abruptly. And then for the second one, the hammer tries to back up to strike really hard, but it can't because the ball is too heavy and it doesn't even knock it off the platform fully. It just kind of rolls off and then bounces off the ground and rolls a little bit with the velocity given from it falling off. But that's about it. I'll show the graph editor for each.
Okay, so yeah, thinking, how could you exaggerate the hammer reaction a little bit more there, right? Like if we had, even here, like if the ball was really, really heavy, and you're hitting it with like a metal baseball bat, like that recoil, yeah, of what's going to happen there.
So the ball, like this.
Or those things at the fair, right, where you're trying to hit the sledgehammer on the thing and it goes up. That would be a really good because you'd have to animate the hammer down and then the thing going up, and that's gonna slow down. It's a
This and goes across, and it bounces right here. And it rolls off. The hammer kind of goes back and then goes forward.
Yeah, so perfectly fine way to do anticipation, right? When you're using the handles, the only thing to say here is like, you know, if this isn't doing what you want, adding a keyframe here allows you to get a little bit more control over exactly how the anticipation is going to work. But it works fine here. I thought the anticipation part looks fine.
And for the second one, the hammer goes back and kind of goes forward just a tiny bit, but then is just retreated back to its original position. Then we have the ball, and that just rolls off, falls off, bounces a little bit. It's very small, but it does have a bounce, and it rolls off. For the mass exercise, I just made sure to have the hammer and ball, when they're heavier, fall down faster and have less bounces. In the easing examples, we have easing, which is just the original ease in, ease out. We have extreme easing, pushes that, so it's a lot slower and then a lot faster and then a lot slower. And then for the ease in, it eases in towards coming back to the text, and the ease out eases out toward the wall. This is just a quick example of the frames per second. These are all the same animation. It just changes how many frames there are per second. We have 24, 12, 8, 6, and I just added 3 for fun.
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, 3 is definitely, you know, like below our, you know, like does it look animated at that point? It does. It does look animated at that point, but like that's you know, it's only 3 frames every second. So great, good. But you figured out.
This is just a hand-drawn 2D version of the easing animation types. So at the top we have linear, then we have ease in, ease out, which wasn't required.
So you can keyframe the.
Yeah, I just did it in Premiere Pro. But you know, and then we have ease in, which slow at the start, speeds up, and then ease out, fast at the start, slows down at the end.
Cool. Oh yeah. Well.
And then this is just a throwback. It's the linear, Bezier, and constant interpolation modes.
Cool. Great. Yeah. I mean, the putting it on the pedestal gives you this other opportunity to really communicate the weight of it there. Part of, I mean, having the light be where it is and having the super long shadow makes it a little bit tough there. But then, yeah, what could you do to sort of make the reaction of the hammer more exaggerated? Yeah, but great. Really, really solid work.
My name is Gage, and here are my hammer hits in Blender. Play it first.
Okay, not bad. The hammers, after the initial falling, we do have a reaction, and it looks like the reaction is directionally good, but then, yeah, it doesn't feel like gravity continues. It feels like it kind of speeds up. So going back and trying to make it look as if they continue to swing freely.
I've got my graph sheets open. And the timeline. This was pretty different from thinking about how the graph looks when balls are bouncing or something's hitting the ground and coming back up, because these are going just across the ground horizontally. So there's a few things I did to show weight, like the light ball accelerates faster, hits the wall, and then rolls back, and the heavy ball
Okay, so yeah, that doesn't look like it bounces off the wall. You sort of decelerate it into the wall, and then it accelerated again after the wall, and so that doesn't. If you want to make it look like it's hitting a wall and bouncing off, it still needs to be a bounce. I'm not sure where that is on the F curve here, but yeah, this change in direction here on your graph editor looks something like this, and even though it's slowing down, it's still going to have to look like that in order to look as if it's bouncing off the wall, right? Because this communicates that you're decelerating into the wall and then accelerating again, whereas this is that instantaneous bounce off the wall.
Across the ground horizontally. So there's a few things I did to show weight, like the light ball accelerates faster, hits the wall, and then rolls back, and the heavy ball accelerates at first but not as fast and slows down very quickly. And there's also a difference in the hammers, how they react to hitting the balls. So the light hammer follows through when hitting the light ball because there isn't much resistance there. It even swings back into position, while the hammer hitting the heavy ball bounces off of the heavy ball and then locks back into position afterwards. And here I have my other videos.
Okay, good. Yeah, you got those in place. Just some work to do there on the first one. Not only in the reaction, but yeah, the hammers feel very they don't look as if they have gravity beyond that initial swing. Looks as if someone's moving them back and forth. Make that more natural. They don't swing enough. They don't swing far enough. They swing far too fast.
Hello, Alec here, and I'm gonna present now my animation of hammer hitting the ball. So as you can see here, I wanted to do like something different for the heavy ball. Instead of just making it moving slower than the light ball.
Okay. I mean, you're communicating that. You had it swing through. That's good. Having this one to continue go back and forth, I think would be good. Here, yeah, so this is that more cartoony kind of thing. Yeah, having it not move at all, right? Is there any movement? Yeah. I think it needs to move a little bit. Okay, like it doesn't, because yeah, like it just doesn't. It's so perfectly still in the computer. It's so perfect that it just doesn't look. It looks like there should be something, right? Even if it was just sort of, just maybe it just there's like a couple frames of it, like just in a couple frames, just nudge it just slightly. It'll look functionally stationary, but there's some sort of visual change to it. Yeah.
Treated it as it was like extremely heavy, so the impact actually affects the hammer, and after the hit, it makes the hammer recoils and it starts doing like this fast.
Yeah, spring-based movement there, and so yeah, it feels like a spring in that it's faster, and then there's a little bit of slowing down as it gets
and cartoonish vibration. So I'm gonna show you the timeline on the graph here for the light ball. You can see here, even if this ball like goes out of frame, it starts spinning and then it decreases the speed. And for the hammers, this is the graphs. Some anticipation for both of the hammers. For this hammer and then for this one. Let me show you now the other scenes. Interpolations, easings, frame rates. I'm drawing. And then heavy versus light.
Yeah, just like that very tiny skip there, even with the heavy one. I think that needs to happen a little bit there. But overall, well done. Really good. Yeah. Okay, is that everybody? I think that's everyone. Let me just double check. I haven't skipped anybody because we looked at Alexis's. We did look at Mark's, Arlenka's, Thomas, Shyla, Anne, Crimson, Amy, Diana, Edward, Trenton, Aaron, Anthony, Desmond, Jose, Lawson, Gage. I think that's everybody. Nothing on the live stream here. Cool. Okay, so based on that feedback, we can make some changes this week. We went deep into the squash and stretch situation there before. How much time do we have? We have 2:30. Let's start with this one. In order, so the exploring that spectrum of squash and stretch is going to be really important here. I want everybody to be able to demonstrate that you're doing that in these. But here, I might use that one as a starting point just to not have to set up some other stuff. There we go. Let's look at this. Okay, and we got some things in place. Okay, let's look at a situation where, let's make another sphere here, but I'm going to do it with the cube. Then I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier. You see that subdivides it and sort of smooths it out. I'm going to go one more there, and 3. And then I'll right click and say convert to mesh. And so this gives me the kind of topology I would want. You see it gives it for this instance, this is a little bit different topology than the UV sphere because we have sort of these 4 faces. Although when you do this with the subdivision surface by default in Blender, it's not perfectly spherical. And so the something we could do to turn this into a perfect sphere is that we could use I'm going to Alt G it, and I'm going to Shift A and make a perfect sphere, one of the UV spheres. And then something we can do is we can take the quad topology sphere, add a shrink wrap modifier. So the shrink wrap takes one mesh and sort of puts it on the surface of another mesh. Usually you're doing it with things like this that are fairly close in shape. And so here we want it to be on the surface of this sphere. And so now if I turn off the UV sphere I made, and now I look at the quad topology sphere, the one that came as a result of the subdivision surface, now you'll see that here it is without with. See, it's very subtle, but it's not perfectly spherical. Now it's perfectly spherical, right? And so again, I can right click and say convert to mesh. And so now, what did I achieve here by doing all this sort of seemingly unnecessary stuff at this point? I've got a sphere that has quad topology, right? So it's got all quads all over here, as opposed to the UV sphere, right, which has mostly quads, but then we have this grouping of triangles and a pole up here, right? A pole is going to be somewhere where we get more than 4 edges intersecting, and it's also not the icosphere or icososphere, which is all triangles, right? And so the quads are going to be a little bit in some instances, they'll deform a little bit more smoothly. So we're going to do that because we're going to do some deforming this time. And in this case, like what we're going to do here is we're going to get a bouncing ball, but we are going to have it, travel some kind of distance. And that's going to present some issues that we have to solve structurally. So for instance, here, if we were to look at this bouncing ball that we made last time, right? So this is one of the extreme squashers. And so this, we are able to really tune our, pun intended, right, T-U-N-E, but this is the T-O-O-N ball. Is it still a pun if it's a homonym? Does that count? I think that counts. Anyway, here, this works, but would this work if the ball was moving, right? If it was actually, instead of bouncing straight up and down, if it was moving across the screen, moving in some sort of direction. And we would run into a lot of issues here in terms of the extreme squash and stretch, where we would end up in situations where things were tilted like this, one way or the other. And so there's a couple different ways to approach this, but here's one. Let's come back to this sphere. Here we will call this now quad sphere. Quad sphere. There we go. And again, why do we do this? We have relatively uniform quad topology. Someone define topology. Arlinka.
It's the flow of the vertices on an object within the computer world.
Sure.
In real life, there's also a term for topology, but I mean in this instance.
Faces on the surface, right? The reason I brought out those spheres there is because we had the same surface, more or less, a sphere, but we had different topologies. There's this quad one, there's the UV sphere, there's the icosphere, right? They're different topologies, but as Arlinka said, this flow of the vertices across the surface is different. This flow of faces, all of the faces are quads, meaning that they have 4. We want quads because it's going to squash and stretch in different directions. And the quads are relatively the same size across the surface, as opposed to the UV sphere, where up here the quads get, if we look at that one, up here, the quads get much, much smaller at the top than they are at the equator, right, on this particular layout. So this one solves that problem. And again, I made this by taking a cube, and then I used the sub-D surface modifier, and I said convert to mesh. And then I used the shrink wrap modifier in order to, again, convert to mesh. But the shrink wrap needed to point at an actual sphere, right? So the shrink wrap essentially, wraps one sphere, wraps one mesh around another mesh, as the name implies, right? You have some sort of shape, and you shrink wrap it another mesh across the surface there. Okay, so that's good. Let's look at this from the side. And so now, for the other squash and stretch, we took the anchor point and we moved it down here. And that worked, but now we're going to have one that is moving across the surface, bouncing like this, and we need it, now that it's doing that, we need it to roll while it's bouncing. And so we have a more complicated situation here. And so this is a technique I'm going to refer to as the invisible box. And the invisible box is that we're going to create a hierarchy of this invisible box over here. And in the box, we're going to move the transform and the squash. And then the actual sphere itself is where we can animate the rotation. And so that the squash, regardless of how we have the ball oriented, if we squash the invisible box, the ball will squash. So allow me to demonstrate. I'm going to change this floor here to a solid color. There we go. And I'm going to take the sphere and give it the checkerboard. Good. Now we have a pattern so we can see what's happening. Now I'm going to make an empty, we'll say plane axes. There we go. And I'm going to move that to, the bottom of the sphere. And so now I'm going to call this parent, or let's call it sphere parent. There we go. And I'm going to take the quad sphere and make it a child of this. I like to do this in Blender by clicking, holding down Shift, and dragging on top of the parent and letting go. In order to do that, you can also select the child, Shift select the parent, and hit Control P, and parent to object. I just like doing the shift drag better. But you'll know you've done it correctly when you have this in the outliner, that the sphere parent is the parent of the quad sphere, right? Again, this is the actual visible mesh. This is the blank invisible box parent. Okay, and so over here, if we were to look at this, let's look at all this here. There we go. If I take the parent and I squash the Z axis here, we can see that this is performing like the spheres that we were working on before, that we did on Monday. But now that this is independent, I can take this sphere, rotate it, and then come back up here. And if I squash, I can squash straight up and down regardless of the rotation of the object. And so this, I'll put this back. I'll set 2 keyframes here. And so I'll set a rotation keyframe here. And then I'll set another rotation keyframe there. And so this is rotating. And so now if I hit play here, but come back to here, even though it's rotating, and if I were to squash and stretch it, it rotates freely, but we're still squashing and stretching from the bottom. Does this make sense for everybody here? Not only what's happening, but why this is useful, right? In this instance, we're going to have this ball, do a bouncing squash and stretch while it's moving across, and it's going to rotate. And so this, what are we doing here? We have officially entered the world of rigging, right? We're setting up some kind of multi-part system that's going to allow us to do the animation, right? Then the rest of the semester is just increasingly complex expansion of this idea till we get up the idea of rigging an entire, biped thing, right? We have to, which is a very complex system of parenting and constraints and whatevers in order to make, in controllers to make it all happen. Yes?
Can I do a quadruped?
Yeah, sure. After you do all your bipeds, then if you want to add 2 more legs and do it again, you can. Right? And so here, we got 2 different parts in order to facilitate the animation that we want, right? As you move along the path of complexity in your projects, this becomes a bigger deal, right? There may be, unfortunately, the way this plays out is occasionally the rig does determine how an object can be animated. And so there are instances where, you get to a point where you want to animate your object this way, and that is going to necessitate that it be either re-rigged or rigged differently, and you sort of need to take steps back in the process and then take a new path forward. Again, we're very early on here, but this is an example of that. Like the reason, like if I just started with this day one to make a bouncing ball, this is a lot of setup to just make the up and down bouncing ball, and it's unnecessary in that instance because that's like we'll say that this is the motto of the semester, right? How much complexity do I want to have in my rig, right? What if I wanted to be able to do absolutely anything? Well, that's going to really require a huge amount of complexity. How much complexity do I want in a given project? Just enough, right? If you have way more complexity, it's going to make doing simple things very hard. You want to have just enough to be able to satisfy your animation demands there. Okay, good. So with this in mind, let's do our block out here of what we have going on. And so again, just to be clear, on the blank parent, the invisible box, we will animate the position and scale. And so that's going to essentially be the movement across the screen and the squash and stretching. And then on the sphere itself, what are we actually going to animate here? This is going to be the rotation of what's going on with the sphere. And so let's do our rotation and position block out to just sort of get a good block out of this. And in this case, we want it to go across the screen, and just for the sake of not having to do a gazillion bounces, I'm going to figure out where I want the camera to start, because that's going to matter for my block out here. And so I'm going to select the camera and sort of look down from the top here. Maybe, I don't want to see the edge. Let's say kind of here. So Control-Alt-0 to move the camera. I may take the camera and then let's move it back a little bit. And so it's not oriented towards the camera. I'm going to switch it to local. Now I can move the camera straight back. That will help a little bit. And then I'll take the camera and also open up the focal length a little bit by lowering it down. And this is also going to need to move back further. Okay. And when you press 0, Blender will look through the camera, but a lot of times it makes the actual frame quite small in the viewport. And so if you press 0 to look through the camera, and then the home key, which that will take the frame and blow it up. It didn't change the camera at all. It just blew it up so that it was easier to see. I don't like this. I want less checkers on my sphere here. Let's go to this material once and look at the shading on this. I'm going to turn that down to something more like that. Okay. And then come back here. Okay, good. That's a little bit easier to look at. And let's shade smooth this thing. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, good. All right, so now let me go ahead and delete those rotation keyframes we made before. And delete channel. There we go. All right. And so now, there we go. That's when we're looking through the camera. And so we want this, I want one bounce here, maybe right about halfway through. And so transform, position, let's get our position keyframes right there, and then let's move back a bit. And so this is one of those things where I'm animating backwards. I've kind of dressed the shot where I want, and I want the ball to, you know, essentially hit here when it hits the ground, but that's going to be in the middle of the shot. Now I've moved backwards, and I can move it up and back, maybe over here. So it's out of the frame, and let's make sure that we set a keyframe there. And so it comes down, and then it's got to bounce back up. And so I'm being careful. I'm working in the 3D view, which is why I'm moving in only X and Z at the time. And then it's going to have to bounce again over here. And setting those keyframes. Okay, that's good. I can just visually correct some of the Z here, knowing that this one needs to be switched to free. Same thing over here. Just look at the Z, select the Z, there we go. Make sure that this handle is kind of up like this, and then these handles are free, so I can have this kind of thing. There we go. All right, and so now there we go. Timing's not quite right. Let's go back to the, or at least it needs to be a little bit better. Let's go over to the dope sheet view here. I mean, it all feels kind of sluggish. So I'm going to take these like so, press S, and smush them in to get a little bit more. The second half definitely slows down. So these, put the playhead here, scale those in to sort of speed that up. Play it again. And the whole thing a little bit quicker. Grabbing all these, scale that in, S. There we go. Okay, and the path here needs a little bit of work now. So let's look at that. Let's go over to the F curve. There we go. And yeah, you can see part of the reason here is these handles have gotten out of control based on the length they were before. And so when you scale keyframes on the dope sheet like that, they can sometimes end up with these distorted sort of curves over here. Again, we're just trying to get this equidistant situation. Good. And now the X location, right? So I just moved mine on the X. So this is an instance where there's a lot of easing in and easing out. And so the speed of the ball across is kind of speeding up and slowing down, which is not really what I want. Like how quickly is the ball moving across the screen? Kind of at, it's much more linear than the up and down, right? And so this is an instance where having these extra X keyframes is actually not that useful. And so I'm going to delete some of these internal ones so I have less frames to wrangle. This is the issue I was calling Thomas out for, was having, you know, a bunch of keyframes. When you want to just draw a straight line, you don't really need them there. And so that slow down, maybe it speeds up a little bit here. And so let's see that now. That's better. And at the beginning, it's still sort of a weird hitch there. Let's take this and move it back. Yeah, it kind of stops a bunch there at the end. I think this last keyframe here needs to be a little bit more linear, and it needs to move further, which means just further up here. Okay, by that point we're off screen, so we're okay. So setting up that initial camera angle is important in this one because, you know, we don't want to spend a lot of time animating stuff that's not going to be shown, right? You'll hear me talk about this a lot throughout the semester, especially the way we do it at the scale we're doing it. Animation is additive. We animate something, we figure out how long it needs to be, and we animate that much, right? And then we animate another scene, and then we add all those scenes together, right? As opposed to filmmaking, which ends up being more of a subtractive process. We shoot a lot of film, you shoot multiple takes, you shoot more than you need, and then you cut things down to make your final film, right? When they make feature-length animated films, they're definitely editing them and cutting them down. However, as students making much smaller things, you don't want to spend a whole bunch of time making stuff that you're going to cut from the final project, right? It's just not strategically a good decision, right? And so, yeah, when the ball's out of frame, we stop caring about it, right? We just need to get the part. We need to get the part that we're looking at here. Cool. Okay, so we got a pretty good block out there for the position. We can move forward from that. Everybody still with me there on the live stream? Okay, that's good. So now we want that independent rolling. And so let's come down to the ball, and we need to have that, it needs to be rolling this way. And so when you think about which rotation do I need, you can think about this like a pin going through the object. And if we're rotating around that pin, that's the axis we need to rotate, which in this case should be the Y, right? And so let's set a keyframe there. And then when we get out of frame, right about there, we need to roll maybe about that much. And then I'm going to normalize to just look at those two. In this case, I think I want to keep this probably pretty linear. So I'll grab both of these and switch them to interpolation mode linear. So it's rolling at a constant rate. And there we go. That's not bad. I think it could roll a little bit faster. Okay, so here's a good one. I want the ball to roll faster. What direction on the graph do I need to move this keyframe to have it roll faster? What? If I move it to the left, it's going to roll the same amount in less time. I want it to still make it the whole way over here, but roll more. No, it needs to go up, right? Up. This is like the number of degrees that we're rolling. And so if we go up here, we'll roll more. And so if we roll more in the same amount of time, we have to roll faster. And so here, maybe even a little bit more. See, as I drag, if I put the playhead here and I drag this thing up, it rolls more in that direction. And it's in the same amount of time because I haven't moved it left or right. There we go. I like that speed for right now, right? In terms of it. That's good. The bounce there on the second one, if I come up and grab this and look at the Z in this case there. If I grab this and go here, no, that doesn't work. And so here, remember, control middle mouse button allows you to zoom in and out this way, which is really important here. And yeah, this one, the amount of bouncing here, there we go. Cool. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we can go about getting our squash and stretch. And again, that's not going to happen on here, right? Because if we squash and stretched the ball itself, we would do it in the direction it's currently facing, which as we rolled would not be what we want, right? To be able to There we go. Roll, if we squash and stretch the invisible parent, when we get here, we are squashing down towards the ground regardless of the balls rolling, right? And so let's get what we want here. And so let's go mildly extreme. And so we'll squash down to 0.6, which means I'll do 1.4 in the other directions. There we go. And let's set some keyframes there for that. And then over here, right before we hit the ground, we'll be at 1, 1, 1. There we go. And then right after we hit the ground, we'll get back to 1, 1, 1. There we go. Set the keyframes. Right, and so now, there we go. And yeah, we can work with the dope sheet here. Again, that pre-squashing, control zoom, or sorry, control press the middle mouse button to sort of zoom in here on specific things. There we go. And so our scale keyframes here with the middle one. And so let's move this one a little bit closer and move this one a little bit further away. There we go. Maybe even a little bit further away. Cool. Okay. And now let's get some stretch in here. And so as it's moving, the stretch is where we might have to sort of tune some things here. We'll look. Let's look. Yeah, we'll look at this one. So we squash and then we want to stretch. And so in this direction, we want to go the other direction. So that's going to be the Z going to 1.4. And then here and here going to 0.6 and 0.6. This is exactly the same kind of math we were doing on Monday. And that gives us that. And then we need to get back to normal, which is going to be 1, 1, 1. There we go. And set that there. And so if these come down, that's good. The problem here is we do squash to the ground, but then at this point we are sort of facing directly up, which doesn't really vibe. And so we might have to add a little bit of rotation in terms of the direction that things are facing, having it face the direction we're actually traveling. And so in this case, here, I'm going to go ahead and set some 0, 0, 0 at the moment of impact, which is here. So let's set that. Right, again, I'm on the invisible parent. And then here, when it squashes, that's not too bad. But then by here, I'm probably going to set this. And then here, at maximum stretch, I kind of want to be oriented in that direction. And so I'm going to set that keyframe there so that we are stretching. In fact, here, I might rotate in that direction and set that keyframe. Right, and so now I'm at least facing in the direction that I'm returning to there. And that's happening pretty quickly. Or I think it's a little slow, so I'll take these and move them over, maybe just a touch. And depending on what you want to do here, the same thing could happen as we're going in this direction. So here's the squash. Again, this is what's happening right before we hit the ground there. And so depending on how, if you want it to stretch towards the ground, the rotation keyframes here may be useful. And so this one over here, perhaps a back that way just a touch. And so there we are. So which means here we could now perhaps stretch a little bit in that direction and bring these down. There we go. But start undeformed. 1, 1, 1. There we go. Set that keyframe and right, so subtle, sort of stretching towards the ground and with the rotation happening here. So the rotation here is not the ball spinning, it's just sort of angling the invisible thing, right? If we just looked at that by itself, right, just watching, I wish the gizmo stayed there while we were scrubbing, but it doesn't. So it's kind of angled this way, and then when I hit the ground, it's angled straight up and down so that I don't squash through the ground in either direction. And then after I hit the ground, it angles this way a little bit in the direction of the bounce. Cool. That works. Let's go ahead and save that. I haven't save as. This is going to be squash and stretch with roll. There we go. Cool. And to demonstrate this even more, right, the idea, you know, understanding the parent-child relationship here, right, we're moving this, angling it slightly, and squash and stretching. That's all happening here. The only thing happening here is the rotation of the ball, the spinning of the ball, right? So if we keep this here, keep it on, it's like this. If I come down here, the only thing I've got is Y rotation. If I come up to here, the blank parent, I've got both, all three, location, scale, and rotation keyframes. If we look at all of them in this view. Right, so here's the scale. Stretch, squash, stretch. That's what that is. Here's the angular rotation. So this is just slightly angling one way, flattening out, and then slightly angling the other way. Here's the position, which is the actual movement of the ball. The only one, you know, the X, this is the ball moving across the screen. This is, I didn't set it to linear, but I just drug the handles, so it's pretty much a line, right? And so it's pretty much moving at the same speed from left to right across the screen. That's the X in my case. The Z, this makes sense to everybody now, right? We have this here. And so some of what we can talk about here in terms of making this a little bit more pronounced, we could do some of the trick that we did last time. How did we really emphasize the ball splatting on the ground? What do we do? Yeah, we sit on the ground for a while, right? It seems very unintuitive from a physics standpoint, but from a visual animation standpoint, it really works, right? And so we could, let's do the, in order to keep the other frames where they are for the most part, we probably can get away with a little bit of this. Let's see. And so here, I'll go ahead and move it just a frame ahead. and then I'll take the moment we're on the ground here, and then I'll copy and paste that right there, and then during this duration, the interpolation should be constant, so that this is a straight line right here, so that we're sitting on the ground. And so there it is. That's one frame. Let's move it over. So if I grab this and move it over, maybe 3 frames. Let's see what that looks like. Right, and so now it like definitely smooshes more onto the ground. Let's see what like 6 frames looks like. Okay, that starts to mess up the second bounce, which we can compensate for. Whoops, not all of them. Just grabbing this one, right? Anytime you have a bounce that used to be symmetrical, and then it ends up looking like that, right? That's not going to look good. It's going to look like gravity is operating with one power on the way down and another power on the way up, right? And so that's what we have here. We need to make this symmetrical and even. Oh my gosh, just this one. I just want this. There we go. And so I can even that out, perhaps chill these out just a touch. And so now, this may be too much. Yeah, I mean, it's really sitting on the ground for quite a while there. That's going to be too much, maybe right about there. Yeah, there we go. And so that's enough to give it that squash while it's on the ground. And then really, it kind of stretches itself into the next thing, right? You really, it's just, 4 or 5 frames, but now it really feels like it hits the ground, right? Because remember before, it's visually on the ground for one frame, right? And so this helps quite a bit here. Really feels like it hits the ground now. Cool. All right, that's good. I think we cataloged our keyframes there. Let's save, and let's just drive the point home in that I want to be able to make some copies of this. And so I'm going to create, let's move the playhead back to here. I'm going to create another empty plane axis, and I'm going to call this position parent. And now I'm going to take everything and shift drag it underneath position parent. There we go. So now I have this very top level where there are no keyframes of any kind. The next level down is where most of the action happens. And then the third level is just the spinning. And so up here, if I select all 3 and then Control C, Control V, make a second one, and then I take the very top level here and move this in, let's say, this direction. There we go. Now I have 2 that work. And I can take the duplicate one here, for instance, and maybe displace it in time a little bit. And so here with this one, probably easier to do this in dope sheet view, right? And so, yeah, I'm in dope sheet view. I'll zoom out a little bit. I'll take all of these keyframes and just shift them over a little bit. And so now, we have one that look at it through the camera and see this. All right, we got our sort of mid-ground ball, our foreground, our background ball. Right, so you'll be able to get away with this to some extent, depending on how far you move something, and you can even create a third one if you want, right? So creating this parent allows me to then move the whole system somewhere else, right? Because the keyframes are relative to the parent. Cool. Okay. Sound good? All right. So, yeah, we built a rig. The rig sort of increased in complexity, increased in order to serve our needs, right? I mean, for those of you who have done something in Blender where you downloaded a rig off the internet and then tried to animate it, that can be really hard, right? Because someone, depending on what they were doing, someone may have made a rig that served their needs, or they may have just tried to make a really, really complicated rig, in which case, like, even animating it at all became, like, inscrutable at that point, right? And so we knew we wanted to do a squash and stretch. We knew we wanted to move the ball across. We knew we wanted to rotate the ball. We incrementally changed our rig to make those things possible. No more, just enough, right? And that's allowed us to do this in some sort of relatively efficient way. Time-wise, like efficient, not for the computer, efficient in terms of us understanding and executing what we're actually doing. Cool. Okay, so everything that we did on Monday, doing this, and then making changes to your hammer, to the scene from last week, right? So that's going to be the main things for this week. Awesome. Good to see everybody on the live stream. Pretty good crowd here in person. And I'll see everybody on